All right, so we are live here and on Facebook. So I think we've got already joined, so I'll just wait for a couple other people to join us, but I'll go ahead and get us started. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is the Chamber's first webinar in light of all the events that have been canceled, including a handful of our own events. We wanted to continue providing value to you, our members, as well as the wider community. So thank you so much for tuning in, and bear with us as we test the waters and figure out how to do this. So a few housekeeping items to get us started. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and click the box in the upper right corner if you're on Zoom, and that'll allow you to see the speaker view for this webinar. At this time, everyone should be muted. If you're not, go ahead and put yourself on mute so we don't have any disturbances during the webinar. If you do have a question, we would love for you to enter it into the chat box, whether that's on Zoom or on Facebook Live. We'll be moderating both Q&As throughout the webinar. It'll help us a lot if you let us know who you are and a little bit about your business. That'll especially help John as he answers your questions. So we'll have Q&A interspersed throughout the webinar, and we'll also have about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. So we'll try to get to as many of you as we can, but no promises that we'll get through every single question. So lastly, we're offering this webinar for free to you all, and we'd love for you to check out more info on our speaker, John Riordan, at www.johnriordan.com. And we'll be posting additional links to his resources in the chat. So why don't we go ahead and get started. We're speaking today with John Riordan, an organization and leadership development consultant. So John, why don't you briefly tell us about your background and what you do?
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here, Ashley. I appreciate the opportunity. So yeah, I've been involved in leadership development ever since high school and college, and then I went overseas in Uganda for 8 years. We established a leadership academy. It never occurred to me that I could be involved in leadership and team development as a profession. But when I came back to the States 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Cindy Zook. She brought me into her practice in working with leaders and teams to expand their capacity to do great things in the world, I like to say. And it's been an awesome opportunity. I just love the work that I get to do in helping folks be productive and have an impact. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, John. So the title of today's webinar is 3 Keys in a Crisis. So I think many of us would agree that our current crisis has slowed down our momentum significantly in our homes and in our businesses. So it's difficult to adapt, to figure out what we should be focusing on and how to stay connected and what tools to use. So that's why we're here today. So John, can you give us a quick overview of the crisis framework and how this can be helpful to us today?
Yeah. Well, it's funny as you mentioned it, and here you are as the Chamber of Commerce, trying something new. It's literally an example of how this 3 keys model works. I've been talking with leaders in a lot of different sectors, and the same core questions keep coming up over and over. Number 1, what is our mission? In this particular situation, does our mission change? The same? If we need to change, what do we change to? And number 2, communication, staying in touch, right? What you're trying to do right now is stay in touch, right, with your stakeholders, with your members, so that you can continue on mission and deliver value. And then number 3 is what are the tools? And here we are, right, using Zoom to run a webinar so that you can deliver that value and stay in touch and learning to use those tools, making sure folks have them and have access. Everybody is scrambling around these same 3 questions. So you can see how they impact one another, because if you don't have the tools, you can't stay in touch and can't carry out the mission, right? And then conversely, if you don't know what your mission and priorities are, then you might be communicating the wrong things.
Right, right. So why don't we just take them piece by piece? So looking at the first key, can you go into how that applies to us today? What is our mission?
Yeah, yeah, that's the first core question, and it really drives the other two. But that's the core question. Organizations in a turmoil like this have got to ask themselves, are we on mission? Do we have to make adjustments? Many organizations, I like to simplify it into three categories. Many organizations are right on point, right? So you guys would be an example of where your mission is perfectly valid, right? In this context, your members need the value that you have, but you're going to have to change tactics in order to stay in touch. First responders, healthcare workers, IT support, right? They are, what they're doing is desperately needed right now. They're going to have to change tactics to communicate. They're going to have to use different tools to stay in touch, but they are on mission. Option B is organizations, companies, small businesses, agencies that need to make some adjustment to mission, not wholesale, but they may have to alter their approach significantly or make some significant adjustment. So education, right? Obviously, everybody's going online and they're teaching their courses online and learning to use those tools. There are some priorities that are going to shift. Some courses will have to drop. Some programs have to drop. But the core mission may still be in place. And then option C is organizations that have to completely reinvent themselves in this moment. So they either stop doing business or they have to find a different business to be in. And so obviously a lot of small businesses, there are a number of organizations, teams that find themselves in that situation where they've been told they have to close their doors. The economics of the situation means that they have to close their doors, or their service just isn't what is needed right now for the time being. And so they're in a suspension. Well, what do? What do? Do they find a new way to do it, or do they find something else to do during this time?
Right. So as far as the know what to do, how do you know when to alter your mission? Obviously, some people can't alter their mission or it doesn't make sense to, but how do you know when and if you should alter your mission going forward?
Yeah, well, as I like to say, welcome to leadership. This is what leadership is about. You've got to get some input from key stakeholders very quickly. That can be obviously your leadership team in an organization. It can be other trusted advisors. To some extent, you want to be listening to your customers and partners and see what they have to say. And then you've got to make decisions. So there may not be a perfectly obvious path forward in this situation. And for many folks, there is not a clear path forward. For some, if you're on the extremes, then you might be one of those folks where it's very clear that you need to continue on mission, and others where if you're told you have to close your doors, okay, then we have to find something else to do, or some completely different way to do it. Most of us are somewhere in between. Get the advice, call some trusted advisors, gather some input from partners, stakeholders, allies, and then quickly make decisions. You may have to revisit all of these conversations through this model as new information and new context emerges, but that is an absolute primary conversation and challenge and a decision that a leader's got to make rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes right to your next point about priorities.
Yeah.
If you need to alter your mission, then that means you need to take a hard look at what your priorities are in this moment and going forward. So maybe just touch on, when you're adjusting your mission, figuring out what you need to prioritize and maybe customize that to your unique situation.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so for example, back to the Loudoun County Chamber as an example, you guys are on mission, right? In this moment, your participants, your members need services. We need this.
Right.
But the priorities have obviously shifted. Running a webinar was not a high priority a week ago. Right? And suddenly we've got to figure out how to do this. Like, this is absolute top priority. I mean, it's a blatant example. But if organizations and leaders don't realize this, then they're plugging away, trying to do the same thing in the same manner, or maybe slightly adjusting tactics. without realizing that they've got to alter their priorities significantly, perhaps, right? It's the safety and well-being of your team members, right? In a healthcare organization, delivering services in a certain manner, and those are desperately needed. Well, pause for just a moment. All of a sudden, the well-being and the health of your staff has to be a top priority, because you can't be sending them in harm's way without taking the proper steps. So sometimes if your mission is on track, it may simply be that there are some new priorities that emerge. In that middle ground, priorities are shifting tremendously, right? Gearing up on tools that you've used before, learning how to reach out to customers, stakeholders, partners in all kinds of new ways, learning new personal behaviors around patience and persistence in trying to make those connections. It doesn't help to get agitated at the person who's trying to help you, like I sometimes do, because there's this sense of urgency for me. They either don't share that same urgency, or they have their own sense of urgency, believe it or not. And so this shift in priorities is happening for all of us, and on a sort of an emotional intelligence level, realizing that my top priority may not be yours. And what was my priority yesterday might not be yours today. And so reconfiguring those relationships. And then if you are in category C, where change and you are radically altering, well, then obviously your priorities have changed, right? Completely. And you've got to refigure the business you're doing, and that's your priority.
Right. I think that's so important. And kind of in a similar vein, I know a lot of Loudoun County residents work for the federal government. So I'm curious what your take is on how this might apply to them. What have you learned? What have you found in recent times?
Yeah, I've been talking with a lot of feds, and God bless them, right, for keeping the infrastructure going and providing the services. They're in the same struggle as everybody, and they're in a big bureaucracy that can't turn on a dime. And so many of them are in that first category. Their mission is on point, but they have to figure out entirely new ways to deliver services. Some have been doing this for a long time. I spoke with an IT agency the other day, and the IT aspect of the agency, they're on target. They've been working virtually. They've been doing all the networking and the collaborative tools, and they're up to speed. They didn't. But then there's others who have been intact and working in co-located environments. And so they're scrambling to get in touch with each other, learn to use the tools, and to keep delivering their mission. Of course, some aspects of public service are in that second category where some of their mission is on point, and some aspects may not be. As facilities are closing down and are on hold, they only need a fraction of the resources that they would have needed before to sustain all that infrastructure. And so can they reallocate that to a different place where there's a need?
Gotcha. We've got a question here from Erica Rowe. She's a chamber member, owner of Sierra Massage Therapy. So most of the info that we're sharing is for larger companies with multiple employees. John, how would this apply to smaller businesses who need to hone in on their mission, maybe even solopreneurs who are trying to figure out whether they have one employee, two employees, or it's just them? How would they go about realigning their mission and trying to figure out what their own priorities are in that smaller setting?
That's a great point. I appreciate the question. The model applies in the exact same manner as for an individual. I'm a test case myself. Is my mission needed right now? Is there a need? Or do I have to go into a suspension on one line of business and find something else to do? Or is my skill and ability and resource perhaps useful, but perhaps in a different way? So for example, as a consultant, right, obviously for me, the majority of my work has been in-person trainings, consulting and working with teams in co-located environments. Well, guess what? Overnight, all my services are now virtual, and thankfully I was poised and ready to use the tools that are available to provide those same services. But of course, I have to help clients understand that those services are available and how they can access them. So it may take some creativity. Don't those sort of tangential or out of the box opportunities to offer a service online. This would be true for a lot of fitness folks, are offering their classes online or giving them away. just to stay connected with their clientele. Doing a podcast, doing a video cast, putting up something on LinkedIn or on Facebook or wherever your customers are to help them understand that you're still there, that you can still be of assistance, if not in the exact same manner, at least in some manner that maintains connection. And then, of course, there's just the reinvention. So I have a young man that I have worked with who is in the real estate. He does the aerial videos by drone in the real estate business. Well, that has slowed down for him, but he's offering his services to all different kinds of clients now to do training videos, right, to produce media material, because he's capable. He just hasn't been involved in that business in the past, but he's pivoting, reinventing himself and putting himself out there.
Excellent.
I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. Thanks. Glad that helped, Erica. So I want to make sure everyone knows they can go ahead and put questions in the chat for John as we go. We're going to try to take them after each point. Just let me know if you have questions and we'll try to get to them. So I think at this point, we've got another one. Landy Patton, he owns a local insurance agency with less than 10 employees. So he says we're young and small, so we need to balance providing exceptional service to thousands of customers as well as growing the agency. So his question for you, John, is in the midst of a crisis, how do you judge what a team, whether it's a small team or a large team, should prioritize?
Yeah, I'll tell you that, again, I'm going to circle back to the idea of gathering input as quickly as you can from trusted, and when I say advisors, your team members, colleagues, it could be peers in the industry who you trust will give you good input. Be careful of two traps. Can you check open to stop moving? I've got some delivery in the background. Yeah, funny enough in this environment. So two traps that we can easily fall into, it's around this idea of motivated reasoning. I will be tempted to believe what I want to hear, and so be careful of that. I might be looking for the answer that, oh no, you're fine. Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Everybody loves loves who you are. Yeah, no, you're great. Be careful, right? From one advisor, that is trusted advice, and from somebody else, they're placating my anxiety, but they don't understand the reality of my business. So you've got to be careful to get trusted advice from somebody who knows you well and knows your industry well, and who's going to tell you the truth in a helpful manner. The other extreme is watch out for the sky is falling. Oh my gosh, it's all going to hell in a handbasket. Well, sorry, I appreciate your anxiety, but I don't want to take that on. I'm trying to think through how I'm going to pivot and get back on track. So gathering that input, getting that advice from trusted advisors, be self-aware as you can to hear it and be discerning, and then you got to make decisions. If I could rattle off just, sort of, I don't want to be repetitive. It could be colleagues who are in the same industry. It could be advisors, and this is an opportunity for you to position yourself as a thought leader to get out there and offer input and perspective because everybody else is looking as well. What are they trying? What are they doing? What's working? What's not working? How are they pivoting? Gathering that input, getting that advice, and then making decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's definitely a time when you should definitely be reaching out to those people who would be a great resource to you. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that are trustworthy. Like you said, trusted advisors are the people that are going to help and give you the advice that you need as you move through. So
if I could mention two points there, another way to put it is tap into your network.
Right. Yes.
Go on LinkedIn, go on Facebook, wherever you have those associations, using the Loudoun County Chamber and asking, hey, are any other members doing X, Y, and Z? What's working, what's not within a particular industry, within a certain size of business or organization, right? There are like-minded or similar organizations that are in the very same situations. And so tap into the resources that you can find. You've got to get yourself out there and ask. It's a tremendous opportunity to offer assistance. I mean, this is what we're doing here today. It's a give something away and be generous. This isn't the, I know probably most of us have seen that, that guy with a garage full of toilet paper, right? Like I get it. I understand what he was thinking, but he didn't think it all the way through, right? So putting yourself out there as, the one who's going to start cashing in on this crisis, you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the organization, the team that is offering, that is helping, that is, assisting and calming and reassuring. And if you can do, that is tremendously valuable. So get that message on whatever media you can. There are folks who can readily help you with that. And be the person and be the organization and be the leader who steps up and shows who you are and what your values are now in the middle of the crisis. There's a couple examples, and if we have a second, let me just rattle through at least one good example here.
Yeah, please do.
So yesterday I was talking with Jason Matchett at the partner group and walking through this model with his organization. And it's a perfect example of a team that is on target, right? Their IT, what they do is deliver IT services to organizations. They're part of the Chamber at Loudoun, and they serve a lot of clients in the Loudoun Chamber of Commerce clientele. Well, yeah, if there's ever a time when you needed IT support, it's right now, right? Stay on track, get on track, learn to use new tools and make decisions. Well, so their mission is absolutely on target. Their priorities have to shift because now they can't go to your place of business as readily. And so they may have to help you walk through the process virtually, which means teaching you to use the tools as we're giving you the tools. And so they are prioritizing helping their clients stay in business and continue their business and keep their IT support going. They're having to figure out new ways of doing it, but their mission is on target. Their priorities have to shift, and they're continuing to support the clients.
Yeah, and I think moves really well into our next point, but I want to say also that I think your clients and your customers will remember how you handled yourself in this crisis. I think it'll be really telling the way that you realigned your mission, the way that you communicated with them, whether on social media or things like this, doing webinars. I think they'll remember how you reached out to them. And I think that will make a difference once this all blows over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that works really well with the next key in your 3 keys, which is communication. So why don't you touch on that and maybe give us some pointers on the best ways to communicate, not just with your own team, but how to communicate with your clients, with your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So having thought through this mission and priorities, then you get to the communication point. And again, it could be a quick transition to that, but make sure you don't skip point number 1, because you get to communication, you want to be communicating the right things to the right people in the right way. And that's always the case, right? I mean, of course, but now it's more critical than ever. You send the wrong message and you've lost trust. You send the right message by the wrong means and nobody gets the communication, right? So you want to make sure you have the right message, that you're getting it to the people who need it, and that you are using the mechanism and the tools that are going to be effective. And they may have shifted, right? What people were watching a week ago may not be what they're watching now. What they were reading, what they were paying attention to, you have drastically different shifts in individual priorities. And so people may or may not be paying attention to the same things they were. So you've got to reconfigure and figure out, what is our message, what's the best mechanism, and how do we get that to the people who need it? There's a number of levels to this piece. Your leadership team, who is that, right? It might just be you and or a few trusted advisors who you might ask to be, hey, can I tag up with you and consult with you on a regular basis? Because as this crisis unfolds, I would really appreciate your advice on a day-to-day basis. There are a number of colleagues who I speak with almost daily to keep tagging up, getting their perspective. What are they trying? What's working? What's not? What's their advice for me? I've been asking them to preview some materials and give me some quick feedback. And so if you don't have a leadership team, create one, right? Folks on your team, ask your allies, and some of them have been helping and some of them have just been waiting for a chance to do something for you. So get a leadership team together, make sure you're tagging up frequently, have the conversation and the communication with them that's helpful. Your staff, if you have a staff, make sure they're having a chance to give their input. Again, watch out for the
Yes.
hair on fire, but you want to make sure that you're asking them. They're the ones who are on the front lines. They're probably using the tools, and they may know what's working and not working. And they're going to be the ones who say, hey, that message is off point. Our clients, our customers, our members, that's not what they're paying attention to. So often your staff are at the front lines and have a better sense sometimes, right, than up at the executive level. So get input from your staff. And of course, then you got to respond. They need to be informed. There's nothing worse than wondering what's going on upstairs, right? Keep your team informed. Even if there's no new information, that is information. So stay in touch. Don't do the, radio silence until we have, a decision. Nope, people will make up stuff. So you want to fill it in with reassurance and outreach to your team. Your stakeholders and customers, and I use those words loosely, but the point being, who are you serving? Who are your partners outside the organization, right? Who's counting on you? Are you staying in touch with the right information? What do they need? A lot of organizations, a lot of the companies are all sending out the, hey, here's how we're responding. Now, the fact is, it could be on one hand, like, I don't need all those emails. I don't need all those messages. At the same time, you don't want to be the one who overlooks the situation, and a customer or client could use that reassurance. Let them know you're there. Let them know what services you're offering in this environment. Or if you can't offer services now, let them know that you'll be there at the back end and figure out new ways to offer useful and valuable information for them. Right? A restaurant could offer nutrition information, a health and well-being service. I mean, that's tremendously important right now. If I can't come in to your massage therapy center or your treatment center or a yoga, well, how can I use that at home? What could I do at home to follow up?
Mm-hmm.
Stay in touch with your customers. And then don't overlook the one-on-one communication, right? With your team members, friends, family, colleagues. In a professional environment, we're all being impacted. Don't forget to ask, right, at the beginning, how are you doing, right? If you need something, let me know. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know, right? How are you, right? Before you launch into the business conversation, just check in with each other, colleagues, as well as customers.
Yeah, definitely. I think that has to be the first step, is to check in before going straight into business. And you talk about the importance of staying connected with your team and with your stakeholders, but why do you think it's so important to stay connected now? How do you think that'll be beneficial in the future of your own business?
Yeah, Ashley, but it's what you mentioned earlier. How you show up now, it really reveals our true colors. I'll tell you, this hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm sure many of us, right? I just was surprised by my own lack of awareness in how suddenly it just hit me that, there are going to be no more trainings. There are going to be no more meetings. There's going to be, like, we are on hold for quite some time. All
yes.
this. So step number one, freak out, right? What am I going to do? I mean, personally,
Right.
a blank calendar all of a sudden, because every training, every workshop, every engagement going from a full calendar to everything's on hold. And I took that out on my family. I don't know if others do the same thing, but, God bless my wife and kids. Like, they get the problem. What the heck am I? Okay, calm down, talk to some colleagues, talk to Jory Gelnett, who helps me through, handle everything, and get back on track. And right, with reassurance and reinvention and realizing, okay, everything just goes virtual. Like, calm down. This is not, everything's on fire, in the sense that I have plenty to offer. I just have to figure out other ways to do it and make sure my clients know that I'm there. So how you show up in this context really says a lot about you. And then reaching out and reassuring, hey, we are still here. We are still offering value in the following ways. For some, it's like essentially, business as usual with a priority on safety and well-being. For others, it's we're still offering value, but here's how we're doing it, a la the Chamber of Commerce, and doing this webinar and getting into all kinds of different ways that you can offer value, but it's going to look different than it was before. And then third, it may be reaching out to customers, clients, partners, and saying, hey, we have to close our doors. We have to, hold off, but we'll be here when we come back, right? And then staying in touch in ways to try to offer value so that that connection is sustained.
Definitely so. And touching on what Erica had mentioned earlier, a lot of information swirling around constantly, not just on social media. It's at home, it's in our businesses, it's everywhere. And know how to decide on what information is critical to let our team know right now and to let our clients know right now that we'll be taking care of them. So how do we decide what information is critical to let them know right now that will benefit us in the future?
Yeah, there is some great stuff out there. Now, I don't want to go down the sidebar too far, but this point around self-awareness, it starts there. We are each, there's an activity I love to do with teams, and all the participants put on a pair of colored glasses, right? And the trick is that everybody's wearing different colored glasses. You look at the same material, and you look at the same exact substance, and everybody comes to different conclusions based on the colored lens that I'm wearing. And it's fascinating, and we talk about this type of metaphor all the time, but we don't realize that we're doing it in real life on a constant basis. We are filtering information. Now, we have to. You can't take it all in. The question is, how am I going about the filtering? Don't just filter out information that you don't like, right? Again, back to this bias around motivated reasoning. We drift towards paying attention to the information that appeals to me or agrees with my opinion that I've already consciously or unconsciously, right? So make sure you are listening to, for example, sources of data and sources of research-backed, right, information that come from, and again, when I say trusted sources, nowadays, you're gonna have to be thoughtful about that. But I would encourage folks to not just narrow down and listen to that one source that I've always listened to. You might want to open up your aperture. Again, ask some folks that you trust and who can advise you, and start to pick up on some sources that maybe you weren't listening to before. And alternatively, be careful of that sort of, I don't know if it's an American thing, and, around the dramatization and the love of crisis, and there's sort of an appeal, and the media and the hype. Well, yes, right? You don't want to buy into hype, but you do want to be paying attention to the trusted sources. That goes all the way from media and at the highest levels, all the way down to people that you're speaking with on an individual basis, and who you're listening to, and who you need to say thanks, but I'll take a rain check on that one. And I'll pay attention to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this one, John, as a leadership and organizational development consultant, I know you definitely work with a lot of leaders in the Northern Virginia area and in DC. This one is for maybe CEOs that are tuning in now and executives. How should a leader be communicating with their team during this crisis and amidst uncertainty? You touched on it before with communication, but want to know maybe some concrete ways and practical tips for communicating with your team if you're an executive.
Yeah, absolutely. And these principles really apply all the way through any level of an organization, wherever you are, each of us individually. But obviously that much more critical for higher level executives who are getting that much more exposure at a time like this than ever. I'd say a couple things. Authenticity. In this day and age, authenticity is really so foundational. That may have not been the same case in the past, in different ages, not just in today's crisis, but in this period of time. Showing up and being real and showing people who you really are is just a hallmark of effective leadership, sort of the foundation. It doesn't make you an effective leader, but if you show up and try to put on a song and a dance and try to pretend you're something you're not, people are going to pick up on that very quickly. They're going to see through it, and you've lost them. Even if you're on message, if your presentation is like putting on a clown suit and trying to deliver the points, people aren't going to, you've lost them. You've lost their trust just because you're not being real. Now, does that mean you reveal all of your, concerns and all of your anxiety? Nope, it doesn't. It doesn't. There may be some confidants with whom you speak prior to get reassurance yourself, right? You may not be the man or woman of steel who has no, you may need that reassurance, and then you come to your team and your organization. And it's okay to say, I have concerns, I have some anxiety, I'm working to handle that. Now, I want to bring to you reassurance and bring to you confidence. Don't blow smoke, right? Don't give people false hope. In a time like this, the leader needs to communicate the real situation. One tool is called the Stockdale Paradox. John Stockdale was the senior officer in a POW camp. And the other service members, God bless them, who were there, came back and survived, and they told the story about his leadership, that he never blew smoke. He never made promises. He never, sort of was, oh, we're all going to get out of here. He kept it very real. It's called face the brutal facts and never give up hope. So it's this paradox of combining that you want to face the brutal facts in your industry, in your business, in your company, in your organization, in our society, but at the same time, don't give up hope, because if you do, then you've abdicated your role as a leader. So you've got to find hope. You've got to tap into a trusted network of colleagues. You may need to find reassurance yourself so that you can turn around and deliver it to others. I mean, my family will tell you, my colleagues will tell you, I've made those phone calls where what do I do? This business is dropping off. How do I reach out to that client? How do I reinvent this service? And I take that anxiety. They talk me through it. They coach me through it. They're helping me so that I can show up and offer hope to others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that showing up for others means you definitely have to take care of yourself first. And that authenticity that you talked about only comes from making sure that you are taking care of yourself and giving, during this time, giving yourself what you need, what your mind, what your body needs in order to be able to be effective for your team. So I think that that's definitely necessary.
Yes. Let me comment. I think there's two phases of this. I think there is, I love the phrase, it's not, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Having said that, there may be a sprint at the beginning here, right? While we're in this sort of phase one of the crisis, and we don't know how long this will go on because the context is changing day to day. So to some extent, we're in any organization may be in a sprint phase where frantically, rapidly trying to figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? How do we handle this? What are the tools we need? You've got to then settle into the marathon mentality that, okay, let's take care of ourselves. We can't stay up till 2 a.m. every single night. Like, you just can't physically carry that out. And you're going to damage yourself and damage your people. So there may be a sprint for a period, and then try to move into that marathon mentality when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes into your third key, I think, which is the tools. So tell us about what tools we can use to be more effective and more productive in our business.
Yeah, right. This is the practical side of it. If you don't have the right tools, then you simply can't carry out your mission. Right? If you guys aren't able to generate and create a webinar, then great idea. You don't know how to use the tools to deliver the value. A lot of organizations are scrambling to figure out what are the tools that they need, how do they use them, and what don't they need in order to be effective. A couple questions. So again, I'm going to borrow from Jason at Partner. He has a great formula for this. What tools do you need for what purposes? And then you got to ask, what do you already have? Right? Can you use what you've already got? There may be capacities on the tools you already have that you don't even know about, right? All the bells and whistles. And I mean, who knows how many of you on the call knew that on Zoom, you can do breakout groups, you can do polling of your participants, right? Obviously, yeah, we all know we can share our screens, but there are so many functions to these different tools that exist that we may not even realize what we've got. The second piece is, does everybody have access to the tools and know how to use them? So it's all great. We're launching, we're going to use this great thing to collaborate and co-design and whatever. But guess what? somebody doesn't have the bandwidth to use it, well, then they're stuck, right? And they're left out in left field. What do you do with them? Do you hold back and not use the tool? Or do you somehow solve that problem for them? Or do you have to move forward and they're going to have to play catch up? So watch out for access and knowledge of how to use the tools. And then third, be very careful about the processes and protocols that you want to have in place so people know how to use the tools in a collaborative environment. There is nothing worse. I don't know if you've been there, but I have. When I put that file in such and such a folder, and then, my exec assistant, Jory Gilnet, gives me the wake-up call and says, that's not where that goes. He's like, oops, my bad. Well, if I put the right file, but in the wrong folder, it's useless. I mean, just the simplest things. What do you name it, right? Have you used the same nomenclature? Because if a team's using different names for the same thing, you end up with a nightmare of version control. So you've got to have the processes and protocols, and there's some discipline involved in that to make sure that we're using the tools properly as a team and that we can function together.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we've got a couple of questions that have come in. I might just pause this for a second so you can answer one, John. So this is from Marcus Decker. Do you see leadership styles changing when organizations, large or small, shift into crisis mode? He says, in my experience, there's a need to go from all-inclusive participatory democratic decision processes to more top-down chain of command ones. So tell us about what you think with these leadership styles, how you think that might shift.
Yes, absolutely. And again, welcome to leadership. That is a very, you may have had a very collaborative, very inclusive process, making all kinds of, making decisions with input from a wide variety of staff and stakeholders and right and all this. Great, right? Fantastic. Yeah, but when the building's burning down, that's not time to call an all hands meeting and ask everybody for input on how should we get out of the building. Now, you want to call on your experts who know, right, and hope that they're prepared. How do we get out of this building? You get the information and you make an announcement. Now, you can apologize to me later when you've dragged me out by my collar because now you say, hey, I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to get your input on that, but we had to make that decision quickly. I would offer that signaling, communicating, back to communication to your staff with the right tools, that you have made that shift in priorities, right? So folks, normally our top priority is to make sure we're connected and getting input. We have had to change priorities. We are going to go to a different decision model. I don't know if I'd call it a crisis decision model, but you might. We're in a code red decision model, and we are going to be making decisions in the following manner. We appreciate your trust. We appreciate your support, right? But we are going to have to make some alterations in this time. So bear with us, and we will expect to go back to our typical standard, processes more at a later time. But yeah, it's not a shift in who I am as a leader. It's not a shift in who you are as a leader. Again, it's a shift in your priorities as a leader. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think absolutely. So definitely having to take those steps as a leader. How do you, John, help an organization figure out what tools they need to increase their efficiency and productivity? But how do you figure out what those tools should be going forward?
Yeah, I'll tell you the three questions. And by the way, there's a workbook. I can mention this again at the end that folks can download for free on my website, because it's just something folks can use to walk through this process. The three primary questions under the tools are: what tools do you have or need, and for which purposes, right? And that's really important to distinguish the nature of the work, not that you typically do, but the work you're going to do now. So Chamber of Commerce, perfect example. I don't know how many folks at the Chamber staff knew how to use Zoom, had used Zoom, had done what? Priority number one, we got to get the tool. We got to learn how to use it, because it's a tactic we are going, new strategy we are going to use to reach our members. And so all of a sudden that becomes priority number one. Do we have what we need? And if we don't, what do we need to get? There are different levels. Project management is one sort of level of engagement, planning tools, execution, accountability, developing and maintaining projects in a crisis time like this is a particular challenge. Collaborative tools around design and innovation and problem solving and that sort of creative aspect, there are tools that are particularly designed for that. And then just straightforward communication, what we're doing now in terms of Zoom and face-to-face video conferencing, good old phone conferences, you know, telecoms, and hey, email's fantastic, right? It's very powerful for the right reason. Just don't want to get into death by email where you end up with millions of iterative emails with attachments and everything's getting lost in that system. So make sure you have the tools you need for the right purpose. Does everybody have access and know how to use them rapidly? And have the specific processes and protocols in place. Now, I'm gonna invoke Jason at Partnered, and he's not paying me for this promotion or anything. I'm just gonna say he has a formula that when he articulated this, it makes a lot of sense. You've got assessing those, are they user-friendly? The ones you have or the ones you're about to bring on. There's no sense buying a tool that would do the job really well, but it's so complicated that nobody can learn how to use it. And don't forget, they have to learn how to use it in the virtual environment, which is its own challenge. You don't have tech support coming and sitting next to you, right, and showing you what buttons to press and which keys to press. They are going to be doing by remote support. They're going to be taken over, you know, so it has to be user-friendly. And then what are the risks? For some, this is a top priority, and others of us, we just need to be very mindful. Is there any exposure when it comes to security? You don't want to be bringing on a tool that's, boy, this is really great and it's user-friendly. And oh, by the way, right, it's going to open our system to all kinds of exposure. So you got to be mindful of the risk. So those are just some quick walkthrough thoughts about how you go about identifying and deciding on which tools to use.
Great. So looks like we have a couple other questions in the Q&A. I'll let everyone know now. So we're kind of transitioning now into the Q&A portion. So if you have any burning questions, feel free to leave them in the Q&A box or in the chat. We'll also try to be moderating any questions that we receive on the Facebook Live. So I'll start off with this one, John, from somebody who wants to know if you have any thoughts on how folks can keep driving on their business goals for 2020, knowing their plans and those of everyone around them have been devastated during this time. So any advice on that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that is so specific to your business, your industry, right, to which sector you are in. You know, God bless the folks who are running a long-term process that is not disruptive. If what you do is underway and is needed now and will be needed in the future, then obviously you've got to look at the economics of the situation. But in terms of your business delivery, right, keep delivering, make the adjustments you can to respond to the moment and be ready to continue this it'll never be back to business as usual, but to continue your service beyond. Most of us are in that middle ground where we've got to reconfigure not only the services we're providing during this crisis, but how we're going to deliver services afterwards and what our business structure is going to be. And then if you are in category C, where you've got a completely changed mission, your business is closed, your business, you've got to rapidly get the support you can in order to figure out how to maintain a pulse during this period so that you can come back to life, right, the minute you have the opportunity. I can tell you that's going to take some advice, right? You're going to have to call on some folks. You're going to have to tap into some resources. Now, a lot of advisors are realizing that this is a time for them to show up and give it away and not be, cashing in on the crisis. So don't hesitate to call your trusted advisor, financial advisor, business advisors, et cetera, and tap in and say, hey, what do I do? How do I handle this? This is my cash situation. This is my business situation. How is this going to impact? How do I survive and come back to life at the end of the crisis as soon as I can and or reconfigure? There are tons of podcasts. There's lots of, just like this, folks are going online and offering information. Get yourself in that game of getting the information you need from trusted folks who can help you out.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And it's definitely the time to be reaching out, like you've said so many times, to people who are going to be able to give you the advice that you need and help you along the way. Waiting for a couple other questions to roll in here. So the tools, John, that you've been talking about increasing your team's productivity and efficiency, do you have any examples of how that's worked in the past, maybe something that you can share along those lines, whether with Jason at Partnered or another example.
Yeah, well, so I've been talking with a lot of different organizations about and walking through this process. So an agency had her division of the agency, in standard times of business, she's responsible for both the administrative support for the agency and the facilities, right, and the sort of the hardware and the IT and the software. Well, needless to say, right now, all of a sudden, it's a complete shift to the administrative support and the IT support, right? Are huge demand. Everybody is demanding IT support all of a sudden, surprise, because everybody's working virtually. And all the questions about HR policies, all the different financial questions about the implications of the situation are pouring in. And so like they've got 10 times the demand or 100 times the demand that they normally would. Well, guess what? The other side of her portfolio, they're shutting down the facilities just on, just keeping the electricity on and sort of ready to reopen. Well, they have a tremendous resource over there that's completely now underutilized. And so half of her mission is doubling in demand, and the other half of her mission is completely, shut down in demand. How does she rapidly redeploy those resources? Because there's no sense having resources sitting around doing nothing over here when there's twice and 10 times the demand over there. So she's figuring out how to help people retool. She's giving people some quick skill development and some quick training so that it can at least be part of the triage. And if nothing else, they are literally making calls to staff members to just say, how are you doing? How, do you need anything? How are things at home? Is everybody okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fact is, a phone call from a colleague, she can't personally call the hundreds of people in her organization, but she knows the ones who have that sort of, emotional intelligence who can make a phone call. This is the person who used to turn on the lights, right, and maintain the building. And now he or she are making phone calls to make sure folks are doing okay. That's critically important at a time like this. So that shift in mission for her, and then those messages all the way from, hey, we need you to reprioritize and retool. And oh, by the way, the messages and communication around, are you okay? And how's everybody doing? And then retooling some folks, new tools and new methods, and making sure their staff know how to use them. And then for others, it's shutting down the tools because they don't need those right now, right? And focusing on something else. So that's in a fairly large federal agency context. The same exact principles apply.
Excellent. That's really great, John. Seeing as we don't have any other questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, I think it's all right for us to wrap up a little bit early. So want to thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Webinar. Thank you all so much, everyone, chamber members and everyone else who joined us today. I'm going to hang around for a few more minutes to include a couple of links to John's resources in the chat. And so if you want to check out some more about the worksheet, how to go about doing the 3 keys in a crisis, implementing it with your business, that link will be there. Anything else, John, you want to include with that?
Thanks, Ashley White. Yeah, we've just put up another resource, a video module that will walk folks through that process. So it's about a 30-minute video. You can watch that, walk through the process, download the worksheet, play the video, watch that so you can walk through it, pause it whenever you want, and you can use that to go through the process. So I've developed the video with a handful of clients and colleagues on a video conference call and use their Q&A and use their input. And so we walk through the model from start to finish. So that's available right there at that same point on the link on the website.
Perfect. Any other parting shots, John? More wisdom you want to impart to us?
No, I can go on all day. Yeah, look, at a time like this, I think we're all in that same position where obviously I would love to work with clients to walk them through this process, professionally. At the same time, send me a question. I'm happy to help and answer as many questions as I can. We're all trying to balance that point where we've got to sustain the business, but at the same time, let's be generous. This is a time to give it away. So So let me know what questions you have, whether send me an email, post something on LinkedIn or Facebook, or whichever, wherever you find me, and let me know what challenges you're facing, and I'll do whatever I can to help. And of course, if I can walk through the process with a client, I'd love to do that. There's other services I can provide in the virtual context to keep providing value to clients. But right now, the top priority is whatever I can do to help. Just let me know.
Excellent. Thanks, John. We definitely need more people like you around at this time. All right, no more questions have popped up. So thank you all again so much. And I'm going to include a couple of the resources that we talked about down in the chat box. And we'll be around. We're looking forward to doing a couple other webinars in the coming weeks. So check back on the Chamber website as well as the Facebook page, and we'll include all the relevant information there for you. So thank you all so much, and have a